Hey, it's Calvin Corelli. Last night I sat down and recorded a response to Chris Guillebeau's email about his love letter to Trump supporters and why it's very, very important that in this election we all vote for Biden. And I just wanted to before you'll see that in a second, I just wanted to say that my agenda here is not really partisan. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm a huge Trump fan. I'm not going to hide that fact. I'm not going to lie about that. But my agenda is not partisan. My bigger point here is, why is it that two smart, compassionate, caring, loving people see the world so differently, right? That Chris see, Biden as the solution and sees, a bunch of things that he believes that Trump did that's terrible. And I see the world in a completely different way, right? Why is that? Why is it that we have such a disagreement on what reality is and how do we solve that? And my answer to that is, the reason why is that very powerful interests want to keep us pitted against each other, right? There is media, corporate media, big corporations, corrupt politicians, and then the money interests that are basically pulling the strings of all of this stuff. They don't want us to think for ourselves. They don't want us informed. They actually don't have our best interests at heart. And so that's why if that is your source of information, then you're being manipulated. So what we need to do is not outsource our truth to the media or to anyone. We have to take responsibility for that ourselves. It's sad that this is the world that we live in, but it just is. It just is the reality that you have to take responsibility for finding truth yourself, for starting to dig, look underneath the surface of the stories, look for other angles that aren't being covered, look at the source material, read the actual government documents, listen to the actual speeches, listen to other voices, start talking to people that don't see the world the same way and truly try to understand how they're seeing the world. Be open-minded, be willing to question your beliefs. Do I really know this for sure? Can I really, really be sure that that's exactly what happened, right? Can I be absolutely sure? And the reality is we can't. We can never fully know for sure. That's just the world that we live in. So we have to navigate that space. And that's difficult. It's hard. But we have to. As citizens, as human beings living in 2020, we have to figure out how to navigate that space. I've been through that process. I have learned that. I'm still learning. We're never finished, right? And I can teach what I've learned in that process. But that's really the thing. That's the bigger piece, is how do we get beyond left versus right? Because again, I think that we're being pitted against each other, left and right, by interests that want us to be focused on disagreeing and fighting each other and fighting for this team versus that team, instead of thinking about what is it that we as people want to create together and what are the ways that we can do that. And having hung out on both the left and the right, talking to people, what I see is that people on the left and the right, we want roughly the same things in very broad strokes, right? We want people to be happy and healthy and prosperous and safe. We want the economy to be thriving, and we want a sustainable planet Earth. We all want those things. So instead of talking about, that and what solutions we can come up with and being creative and, excited and interested for that, we end up fighting over this or that and will this thing do that or that. Like, it's a waste of time. And I think it's intentional because while this is happening, our politicians are selling us all out. Like, it's not an accident that the middle class has been dwindling for the past 40, 50 years, right? It's not an accident. And so you and I, as regular people, we can take the power back, and that's what we need to do. And the way that we do it is to take control over our own lives, our own information flow, our own understanding of reality, and start to actually talk to each other instead of despising each other. All right, so that is my game plan here, and now let's get to the conversation, or my response to Chris's email. What's up, people? It is me, Calvin Corelli, founder of NotableNation.com. I'm here to talk about an email that I got from Chris Guillebeau, or actually I didn't, a friend forwarded it. I'm not on his email list, but In it, it's a love letter to Trump supporters. So that would be me. And in it, he is basically making the case for why you need to not vote for Trump, why you need to vote for Biden. And so I'm going to go through that email and share my commentary on it. So, ready? Let's go. All right, here we go. So sent to my COO, Matt. He's on the list. So it says, hey, Matt, you're not to be so blind with patriotism that you can't face reality. Wrong is wrong, no matter who does it or says it. I think we can all agree on that. I am totally 100% on board with that sentiment. All right. Hey, Matt, I'd like to speak to any of my readers who have supported the current U.S. president in the past or who are planning to do so again this year. There aren't a lot of you. Interesting. I thought that there were quite a few, but I guess they're maybe not on his list of his readers. Okay. But you tend to be very local. And believe it or not, I've been trying to understand where you're coming from. All right, Chris, I am happy to help you with that. And because it seems from reading the rest of your email that there's still a lot that you have to learn there about why people are doing it. I'm not saying that we're right in believing what we do, but just in terms of where we're coming from. All right, I wrote and rewrote this post at least 3 times before figuring out what I wanted to say. I knew that if I insulted you, you wouldn't listen, which is fair because I don't tend to listen to people who insult me either. It's great. One of you wrote to me recently to say that I must think everyone who supports Trump is a moron, but that's not true. I replied, I think a lot of them know exactly what they're getting with their candidate. And that to me is the greatest problem and what I find the scariest of all. All right, so now we're getting into some meat here, right? They're morons, and he's saying, no, I think they know exactly what they're getting, and that's terrible and scary. And so are we still morons? I'm not sure. All right, I don't want to get ahead of myself, however. As I said, I've been trying to understand why so many people would support someone with the clear intention of destabilizing the world. Huh. All right. So my first question here is like, Chris, as you've been trying to understand why people would support Trump, have you actually spoken with people who support Trump to genuinely understand why? Right? Because if you haven't, then you haven't tried. So it sounds from your email, which we'll get to, that you've tried to imagine why people might, given your perception of the world, but you haven't actually talked to and really tried to understand why, right? And there's a technique here called steel manning, which is essentially the opposite of straw manning. Straw man is you conduct this like phony argument that you claim that the other side believes, and then you rebut it, right? Steel manning is that you genuinely try to understand their case and their argument, and then you try to make it better than they could themselves, and then you refute it or build on top of it, right? So anyway, so at first I thought I'd try to take a step back and think about it more. And Chris, again, I would encourage you to talk to someone and listen instead of think. But anyway, to start, I went back 4 years in what seemed like a lifetime ago. Why vote for Trump in 2016? A few actual reasons. What I wondered, again, you don't need to wonder, you can ask, would cause a version of myself to be attracted to such a candidate. Could there be anything? In fact, I realized there could be several things. One, there was a destructive approach to his strategy as a first-time candidate that I respected. He came in traditional party structure and refused to follow its rules, somehow managing to impose his own and getting everyone else to follow along. There's no doubt about it. This was a remarkable feat. Under the right circumstances, being an outsider can convey power and status, especially when the insider choices are so undesirable. If you're frustrated with the political process in America, and there are many good reasons to be, then I can see why it's attractive to encounter a successful candidate who disregards nearly all of it. Similarly, I tend to admire people who question norms and protocol. Should the US president have to spend his time hosting state dinners and welcoming sports teams? Must he pretend to respect his opponents in the primary, even if everyone knows they all hate each other? Clearly, there's a line between bravado and carnage. But on the surface level, someone who says, screw this, I'm going to do it my way, has a certain appeal. So I get it, at least some of it. All right, I think this is a pretty superficial read, but all right, fair dues. Furthermore, if you believe that things aren't the way they used to be, and along comes a candidate who makes a direct appeal to the past instead of the future, then I understand how some of those pieces clicked into place for you. Mitt Romney was honest when he told Michigan that his auto manufacturing jobs weren't going to come back, and he lost the election. Trump promised them otherwise, even though he had no ability to make it happen, and he won. All right, so let's talk about that for a second. All right, so why wouldn't there be auto manufacturing jobs in the U.S.? I don't have the answer, but like to me, it's like why, right? Is it because we're not good at technology and automation and robots? Is it because of labor costs, right? Is it because China employs slave labor and we don't? Like, I don't know. Is it Michigan specifically? Is there, like, as far as I know, Elon is building car factories in California. I think he wants to move them, right? So we can have car production in the US. Don't they make cars in Europe also? Like, why shouldn't we be able to have car manufacturing jobs in Michigan and other states? Like, what would prevent us from that? I think one of the storylines that were going on during the Obama years and before Trump, right, was this idea of managed decline, is the way that it's been described, which said, well, America as a superpower has kind of peaked, and now like China and other countries are going to take over, and we're kind of we've peaked. Now it's just going to be decline from here on, and we'll just like do our best to manage the decline as America kind of sinks into like, I don't know, oblivion or something. And Trump came in and he said, "Fuck no, we're not going to accept that. Of course we can be great. Of course we can have the future ahead of us is brighter than the past." So when I hear Trump, I don't hear him appeal to the past. I hear him going against the thing that says that America's best days are behind us, and instead saying, no, we can be even greater in the future than we were in the past. We're still on the up. That's what I heard Trump say, and those are the two competing narratives that I hear. Yeah. And then, like, even though he had no ability to make it happen, so I don't know the details, but as far as I know, like, he did make Mexico move manufacturing, or make car manufacturers move car plans back from Mexico to the U.S., or maybe he didn't. I honestly don't know the details of that. Maybe none of that happened. Maybe some of it did. Maybe it was all a lie. But regardless of what Trump was or wasn't able to make happen, wouldn't you think, like, so his basic claim was that companies make the cars cheap in low labor countries, right? Some of which employ, like China employs slave labor, and then they just sell them into America with no tariffs. And he's like, why should we let you guys do that, right? Why should we let you, suck out money out of our economy and then, make these cars using slave labor somewhere else? Why exactly will we let you do that? Like, let's get the manufacturing to happen here. We used to know how to manufacture, how to make stuff. And I can see the point that when a society stops making stuff, that society becomes really, really vulnerable, right? We don't make our computers. It was like COVID revealed that we don't make PPE, personal protective equipment. We don't make penicillin. We don't make antibiotics. We don't make most medicines in the U.S., and we don't make the raw materials that go into them. That's kind of a dangerous place to be, right? Like, well, assuming that everybody's hunky-dory and everybody gets along in the world, I guess that's great. But do they? Do we all just get along and everybody's happy? I don't think so, right? So I think it's kind of, just from a national security perspective, kind of smart to make sure that we have manufacturing of, essential technology, medicine, etc., at home in America. I think that's just really smart. So you might say, well, but it's hard, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure, it's hard, it's complicated, but I think it's a worthwhile goal, and we're we're creative, innovative people. So it seems like a challenge that we can figure out how to solve. There has to be a way if we're creative enough, right? So that's how I look at that. So lastly, perhaps you supported him 4 years ago as a protest vote of sorts. You didn't like Hillary Clinton for whatever reason, so you thought, I'll just add to the number of votes for the other side, even though we all know he won't actually win. I'm sure there are people who did that. Voting for Hillary was the obvious choice for me, but if I didn't like her, and B, thought she was going to win no matter what I did, then I understand the protest vote logic. Okay. Of course, much to everyone's surprise, including the president himself, it seems, he actually won. Russia helped, and so does James Comey. Did Russia help? Did Russia really help? Do we know that? Like, as far as I know, they spent like $100,000 on Facebook, and it was pretty pathetic. I don't know that Mueller investigated for a long, long time. I don't think they really found much of anything. So I'm not sure. I haven't seen any clear evidence that Russia did much to really help. But I mean, he did win, right? So, all right, going on to say, but I don't deny the fact that a lot of people in the right swing states truly believed in him. The phenomenon was real. May I add, it's still very real. Like, if you've seen the turnout at his rallies, and just now in the past few days at Walter Reed, people flying in from all over the country to support him, right? Like, the movement and the love for this president and the love that he has for people in return is palpable, like really palpable. It's very interesting. And I see Trump's flaws. I'm a Trump supporter, but I see his flaws. I absolutely see his flaws. But given that he is the candidate that we have, I'm behind him. I think there's a lot of great to him. So we'll get to more of that. So, all right, Chris says, what we've learned in 4 years. All right, so, but now it's time for the reality check. That was then, and now here we are 4 years later. For everyone who said, let's give him a chance, ask yourself, how did that turn out? For anyone who thought he would grow to be presidential and stop bullying people online all day, what happened? Yeah, that didn't change. Trump remained Trump, right? How did it turn out? What I see is, and again, Trump is a flawed candidate, and he should shut the fuck up sometimes. Like, he just makes unforced errors all the time, and he loves being in the media. He loves hearing himself, and he creates a lot of problems for himself. Like, really insane amount of problems for himself. However, the media emphasizes everything and blows it out of proportion. And I know that this is a sort of a right-wing talking point about the fake news and all that. I'm sorry to have to break it to you, but it's real. It's really, really real. And I know this because I have spent considerable amounts of time studying this, like reading articles, reading through to the source materials, actually sitting and listening to all of the entirety of the Kavanaugh hearings and reading into all of the materials behind it and what really happened and all of that stuff and, so many other things. I don't do that on an ongoing basis anymore because who the fuck has time to do that? But, and I'm happy to dig into and show you about that. And I don't trust any particular source. I get my news from a wide variety of sources, and then I try to suss out what is real and what's not, and what's conjecture and what's narrative and what's not. But I think a lot of the reason that a Trump presidency has been as tumultuous and damaging as it is because of the media. Is not the only reason. I think another major reason why is that the political establishment for the past, I don't know how long, 3 decades, 4 decades, 30, 40 years or something like that at least, have been systematically selling out the American people to the highest bidders. I don't think it's an accident that the American middle class has been decimated. I don't think it's an accident that the wages have stagnated, and wages are actually up under Trump. I don't think it's an accident that just like middle America is worse off than it has been in a long time. That was intentional, because in the sense that politicians didn't give a fuck, right? So there's this, in my view, there was this tacit agreement between Democrats and Republicans that they would argue a little bit around the edges in public and put on a show. But, behind the scenes, they were all just in it for themselves and their donors, and nobody gave a crap about the people. And in comes Trump, and he actually do give a fuck, and he's not going to be steamrolled. He's not going to give in to the regular way that things are done. And I know that you're probably going to be like, oh my God, you've really drunk the Kool-Aid. But that is what I see. That is what I see. And so, yes, does he bully people? Yes, but only people who attack him first. Do you ever see him attack people first? No, he doesn't. In the cases where you think that happened, that wasn't actually what happened, or at least it's very questionable whether that happened. I dare you to come up with an example that's not, but this is not my day job, right? I actually have a software company to run. Let's move on here in the text. Again, you need to acknowledge reality. This is an administration that has separated families and put immigrant children in cages. Can I just point out that this started during the Obama administration? Some of the photos that have been circulating online of these cages and the children within them actually the actual photos date back to the Obama administration. I guess you didn't know that. But that is, as far as I know, a fact. And so why might you have the wrong idea about that, assuming that it is wrong? Well, because, again, the media, and by the media, I mean the established mainstream media, that would be CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, NPR, New York Times, Washington Post, Washington Journal, I think. They all paint the same picture, right? And interesting, so I'm a Danish citizen. I'm from Denmark. The media in Denmark, left or right, all of them are completely on board with that same view, right? In the US, we have Fox. And so Fox, here's my take on Fox. From speaking with people, like CNN has a narrative, and it seems to be coordinated with the Democrat Party, and that's the narrative, and anything that fits that narrative, they're going to run. Anything that they can make fit that narrative, they're going to make fit that narrative. Anything that doesn't fit the narrative doesn't get airtime. Fox News, I used to be like part of the Jon Stewart crowd that would joke about Fox News being quote unquote fair and balanced. Ha 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 ha. Fair and balanced. Ha, marketing genius, right? Turns out that Fox News is actually currently the channel that will have people on that disagrees with them. And their daytime lineup tends to disagree with some of their nighttime lineups. And so I spoke with Dave Rubin of the Rubin Report, and I'm like, why are you never on CNN or MSNBC? He's like, they won't have me. They won't talk to me, right? But Fox News will actually have people on that disagree with them. Now, so my take on Fox News is the one show that I really appreciate over there is Tucker Carlson, which also happens to be the most popular show. Does he spin stuff? Absolutely. Like from time to time, you hear him straw man argument, beating back straw man arguments and just kind of misconstrue what people are saying to make a point, etc. But he asks some really, really good questions. And he attacks, quote unquote, his own, like as much as the other ones. So, or maybe not as much, but he attacks anyone, right? When they don't do a good job. And he's, sharp tack. Like he goes fucking after people when he goes after people. So that's the one show that I really appreciate. And Sean is just too partisan, too biased. I can't handle that. And there's like no other show. Mark Levin has some really good points, but it's a little too boring for me. So that's kind of my main thing on Fox. However, Twitter and YouTube have been great sources of other information for me. So, Rubin Report is fantastic. Scott Adams has his daily show, Coffee with Scott Adams, which is formidable. Twitter is really great. Mike Cernovich on Twitter is very, very early with a lot of scoops. Very interesting. War Room Pandemic with Steve Bannon and Raheem Kassam and Jack Maxey. Really good. Jason Miller used to be there. He now runs the Trump campaign. So, no question of where their politics lies. It's no secret. But they have some really, really interesting angles that are worth listening to, right? So I went through this in 2018. I started deliberately seeking out sources that I thought were like terrible. Like, I always saw myself as a Democrat. Still, I don't get to vote in this country. But I was a huge fan of Obama, right? Huge fan of Obama. And loved Clinton, Bill Clinton, didn't like Hillary. And at that point, I was like, I don't know if you know what happened during the primary with Larry, I'm blanking on his name right now. But anyway, so he tried to run on a campaign that was basically, let's get corruption out of politics. Let's get money out of politics. He's going to run on the Democrat platform. And they changed the rules on him so that he wouldn't be allowed to participate in the first primary debate in the Democrat Party, right? So there's a lot of stuff during the Democrat primary last time that was kind of corrupt looking, the whole way they shut out Bernie and like gave Hillary questions and things of that nature. And yeah, I just never trusted Hillary. She always seemed very, very untrustworthy for me. So I was like, hey, maybe this outsider who doesn't need the money, is not dependent on the money, that he can Trump and come and shake things up, and sure he shook things up, right? But so anyway, we got to the children in cages. All right, let's keep going on this one. On a daily basis, the president uses a social network to insult not only his enemies, but eventually every single person or group he encounters. I don't think that's true. Like, what are you talking about? Does he insult his enemies? Fuck yeah, he does, right? Absolutely. But here's the thing. So what I see is a president that has the entire political establishment, including the FBI and the CIA and the NSA, and just sort of like the regular bureaucracy against him, right? Again, Washington, D.C. is heavily left-leaning. You can see that in, the mayoral race and like just politics in the city in general. So that the general population of D.C. is heavily left-leaning, which means everybody who works for the bureaucracy, for the apparatus, for the government apparatus in D.C., heavily left-leaning, right? All the social circles and the cocktail parties and all that stuff, heavily left-leaning. That's the reality of the city in which he works. And, you've seen the FBI, abuse FISA warrants and steal dossier and all that stuff to try to go after Trump before he was even elected. After he was elected, they went after Flynn, presumably because he knew how the system worked, and so they were like really scared that he was actually gonna clean shit up. Like what Dan Bongino says, I don't know enough to really know if this is true, but I will say that like just sniff test, this stuff checks out for me, and I've put enough attention into it to kind of like get the sniff test off it. He wasn't supposed to win, right? So it was supposed to be that their undermining of him was effective enough that Hillary won, and then nobody would have been the wiser, right? So now we just have the problem that he fucking won, and so bad shit, right? And so that's why you talk about, I'm going to read the next sentence here. No one is safe, not military veterans, the disabled, or even his own revolving cabinet of advisors. So his own revolving cabinet of advisors, right? So again, if you buy into the idea that there's this massive establishment in DC. They've just been doing their fucking thing for decades. Nobody gives a hoot about the actual people of the country. They're just all like, lining their own pockets and doing their own shit and selling out the crown jewels to the highest bidder. And now Trump comes in and he says, fucking not on my fucking watch. Not anymore. I'm not going to sit by and watch this shit happen anymore, right? So could you imagine how hard it is to find good people that you can trust, right? This would explain also why he works with family members so much, because those he knows that he can trust, right? It's really hard when you try to run an organization and the people who are fucking working for you and are supposed to execute your orders faithfully just aren't doing it or refusing to. And in a lot of instances, there's been stories of like people just ignoring the orders that come from the president directly because they disagree with it. That's not how it's really hard to run a company or run a country that way, right? Military veterans, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about with that one. I know that there was a story in the Atlantic about how he called them losers and that kind of stuff from 4 anonymous sources. And the Atlantic is known for putting out crap from what I understand. I don't buy that for a second. He has done a lot for Veterans Affairs. He's always he shakes the hands of hundreds of veterans. I think from everything I've seen, the guy has tremendous respect for the military, the rank and file military people. He does have a beef with the generals, right? Trump is the first American president to not start a new major war, right? That's a big deal. Who wants wars? Everybody in Washington, right? They profit from it. The generals have this revolving door between Pentagon and all the military industrial complex, which was that Eisenhower that warned us against that, right? That shit's real, in my estimation, in my take. And the press, obviously, the media loves a good war, right? It's more to write about, uniting people. Everybody loves a good war, right? Except the soldiers who are going to fucking fight it and might risk their lives and their families, and the taxpayers are going to pay for all this shit. This stuff is expensive. 19 years in Afghanistan? Holy crap. What the fuck? Almost 20 years, insane. For what? What do we get out of that? Nothing. Jack, nada, right? It costs trillions of dollars. That you and I are paying for. I don't even get to vote here, but I get to fucking pay for it through my taxes, right? That's insane. The disabled? Are you talking about that, that thing with the journalist that was disabled, that kind of thing? I think that's maybe not. I think it's been blown up for sure. I'm pretty sure it's a hoax. It was a thing. It's a move. It's a thing that he did with people or other people. I don't think there's any clear indication that he knew that the guy was disabled. I don't think he was trying to mock him. I don't know who else you would be talking about that's disabled that he would be singling out. I see him definitely going after the people who attack him. He's an attack dog, right? If you attack him, if you attack him, he's going to attack you back 3 times as hard. But I haven't seen him attack anyone first. All right, that's not his style. That's not what I see anyway. Above all, this is an administration that refuses to acknowledge facts or tell the truth. That's kind of a big statement. I mean, I would say that that's exactly what CNN is doing. It's exactly what Nancy Pelosi is doing. It's exactly what Chuck Schumer is doing. It's what Biden is doing, by the way. The whole Charlottesville thing, both people good people on both sides, for example, Trump saying that Charlottesville neo-Nazis were great people. He never said that. Go back and look at the transcript. He never said that. That is the lie on which Biden built his fucking campaign. Biden built his campaign on that. And he keeps repeating it, even though it's a lie. It's a complete and utter fucking hoax. Even Jake Tapper on CNN has acknowledged that it's a hoax. You can find the video of Jake Tapper acknowledging that that was not what the president actually said. And yet CNN keeps running that clip and keeps running that hoax as if it's true because they know that people still believe it. So who the fuck cares if it's a lie? It works, right? So that's what I see the media doing, or like the mainstream media. Now, does Trump have like a little bit of a funky relationship with the truth? Absolutely. Here's the way I like to think of it, and I'm not going to apologize for that. It's not I'm a very much like an integrity person. Integrity and truth, that's the hill that I'm willing to die on. So I don't endorse that approach, but I understand where he's coming from, and you have to listen, you have to hear him in a certain way. He likes hyperbole, and he's not a very accurate guy with like the details. That's not who he is. It's just not who he is. But generally think of it as like directionally. Directionally, he's generally correct. He's also not like a details brain. He's a gut person. He has a gut instinct, and his gut instincts are not bad. His gut instincts are often very, very solid. If you ignore sort of the bluster and the media version of things and just look at him straight, like his guts are actually pretty darn good. Like look at the Middle East peace, right? The Abraham Accords. Everyone has said for decades, oh, if you move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, like all hell's gonna break loose. And then Trump goes like, all right, let's see, and he moves the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, and like nothing happens, right? Like decades of conventional wisdom, wasn't fucking true. It was like, did he do a lot of research on that and a lot of studies? Probably not. I mean, I'm sure they did something, but like, I think at the end of the day, it's kind of unknowable. He's just like, God, I think it'll be fine, right? Secondly, people have believed for decades that the key to peace in the Middle East was solving the Palestinian problem. Turns out, nobody in the Middle East, none of those other countries, really give a crap about the Palestinians. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, but it's the facts on the ground. Like, everybody's pretended like you had to solve the Palestinian problem first. Trump was like, I don't think so. Let's see if we can't just make some deals between these countries. Because I think most of the countries down there, they're tired of the shit and they just want to have a peaceful relationship. Israel's going to go away, so you can forget about that. And if you want peace, you can fucking have peace, right? Let's have peace. I mean, and so that's what I see in Trump, is someone who's like got pretty solid gut instincts. But he's not a facts, like a details, specifics kind of person. All right, over and over, the president and his allies lie directly, and his supporters, maybe you, don't seem to mind, right? So again, I see Biden lying all the time. I see Biden lying over and over again, like about Trump. I think there's like 6 separate hoaxes during the debates that Biden brought up that are just outright lies. And Chris Wallace didn't fact check it. Like nobody seems to mind, right? So that's what I see. And again, I'm not saying that Trump always tells the truth. Absolutely not. No, he doesn't. And there's definitely saying. I mean, also let's just be real. Like as the president, you're always going to be lying to some extent. It's just part of the job. Like they're classified things, and there's like secret things that are happening that you can't say. And I think that sometimes is like, if you look at like the what was this guy, that like Washington Post contributor, Khashoggi or something, that got murdered by the Saudis, right? There's a lot of outrage back then over, oh my God, Trump, and why doesn't he say something bad to the king or the prince or whatever of Saudi Arabia? You and I, we don't know what happened behind closed doors, right? Maybe Trump is like, it's fine, I don't care. Or maybe what really happened was that Trump was like, dude, I'm going to let you save face in public, but you're going to give me this in private, right? Could be. We don't know. We just don't know, right? And so keep in mind that you never see the full picture, right? We never see the full picture. That's always going to be the case. That has always been the case. It will always be the case. That's just how government works. All right, let's keep going. As the saying goes, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention, or you just have different information sources, right? That's the thing, is like, so in 2018, I started deliberately seeking out sources that I disagree with, and I was like expected to be outraged. And then I was like, this is news. I hadn't heard this before. This is interesting. And then I went deeper and deeper and deeper, and I read like well over 100 different books and started reading, studying, and listening to videos and just going deep on all of this stuff. And do I know for sure that everything that I, sort of believe now is the absolute truth? No, I don't. But I just know that maybe if you're not outraged, it's because you just see things differently, right? It may not be because you're not paying attention. It may be because you're paying attention to the wrong sources. That's a possibility. All right. If you have children or grandchildren, how do you explain to them that the President of the United States makes payoffs to porn stars? You know what? Honestly, is that great? No. But then again, Clinton, had sex with interns, and there's been a fair bit of pretty credible sexual abuse allegations against Bill Clinton. So, John Kennedy, famously. So is that great? No, it's not. But at the end of the day, do I give a fuck? No, I don't. I don't need my president to be the moral arbiter. I need him to get the job done. I need him to fight for American citizens, at home and abroad. Right? That's what I need the president to do. I don't care what his personal life is or sex life, as long as it's not a national security problem where someone has something on him. And I don't believe that that's the case, because given all of the investigations that we've had, I think we would have known by now. All right. And do you remember that the greatest moral controversy of Obama's 8 years in power was that he wore a tan suit to a press conference? Chris, that one is what about weaponizing the IRS to going after his political opponents? I'm pretty sure that was a thing that happened. Also, again, children in cages, that was something Obama started. So I think the reason maybe why the greatest moral controversy of Obama's 8 years in power was the tan suit is because, again, of the sources that you're following. So if your primary sources are CNN, MSNBC, CBC, ABC, NBC, New York Times, Washington Post, etc., yeah, sure, those are the greatest moral controversies there. But if you seek out some or other sources, you're going to find something else. I highly recommend Breitbart's Righteous Indignation as a beautiful place to start your journey. Basically, the point that he's making is that the reason why you have a Rush Limbaugh and the whole sort of right-wing talk radio, Tea Party revolution, and now obviously Ben Shapiro on the Daily Wire and the Dave Rubin show and a ton, Dan Bongino, there's a whole host of shows on the right, and you don't have the similar universe on the left, is that universe on the left is just called the media, the mainstream media, right? And so because the mainstream media is so left-leaning and so sort of all souped together, that has opened up this space on the right to be filled by all these other organizations. So I think you need to expand your sources. Another great one is Thomas Sowell. He's written a truck ton of books. He's an old professor at Stanford. He happens to be black. He's written about all kinds of things, economics. I have his book, Basic Economics, here, which is phenomenal. It's thick as fuck, but it's actually a really good read. The audiobook is surprisingly great. Highly recommend that. It's such a great book. But many others that he's written. Okay, let's keep going here. Making America worse than anyone thought possible. One of the great ironies of the president's agenda, if such a thing exists, since so much of it is driven by personality instead of ideology. See, again, that's not what I see. It's not driven by personality. For me, it's driven by love of America and all of its citizens. All of its citizens. No matter your class or race or, even political orientation, as long as you're a decent person, decent law-abiding citizen, Trump's on your side. That's what I see. Right? And I think he definitely has an agenda. But what's being portrayed, again, in the mainstream media is this very personality-driven person. So you have to start, you have to listen to not just like the little snippets and like whatever they spin it to, but you have to, listen to the whole thing, get sort of the whole story on the other sides, hear him explain his thinking, and try to like listen with a different filter if you want to get it. La, 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 is that the promise to make America great again has actually made America much worse off. Okay. Back in 2016, Trump campaigned with rhetoric about how the world was laughing at the US because we were weak. I travel a lot, or at least I did before the pandemic, and I can assure you that the world thinks very differently about American leadership now than it did 4 years ago. It's not a positive change. Our allies are shaken and our enemies are emboldened. Why do you think Russia has invested so much in trying to destabilize the US? They achieved a tremendous victory 4 years ago, and they're on the verge of doing so again. All right, so let's look at that again. So I travel a lot, and I can assure the world thinks differently. So are you talking about the world leaders, the prime ministers? Are those the people that you talk about, and they think differently about America? Or are you talking about the regular people? They might be thinking the same way. But here's what, again, you need to understand is that the media in the entire rest of the free world are like the US mainstream media. So they only give you that side. They love ridiculing Trump and making him look like an idiot. And he gives them plenty of fodder. I'm not going to argue with that. But he's not quite that bad. He's a little smarter than that. And he does have a plan from what I can see. But he's also very good at, like, he kind of knows where he wants to get to, and then if it doesn't work out the first, he'll, like, Scott Adams has an expression he calls, like, shake the box. So he'll just, like, change some parameters, see what the fuck happens then, and then maybe there's an opening. And if there's an opening, he's gonna fucking go for it, right? So he has different approach to it, which happens to be a very effective approach to solving problems, right? But I think, like, so the big, you talk about Russia invested so much in trying to destabilize the US. I don't see that, but what I do see is China investing a lot in trying to destabilize the US, right? So in my perspective, the whole Russia thing is a complete red herring, complete, like, waste of time and energy. Like, Russia's like small by comparison, right? They're not really a threat. And Trump was correct in that. Like, why do we need to fight fucking Russia? It doesn't make any sense. China is the one that wants, like, Russia was like decades ago. China is the country that wants to take over America, and they're doing it very effectively, right? So they've infiltrated higher institutions of higher learning. They have spy rings. They are constantly hacking, not just the US, but in the entire Western world. You see Disney and NFL and Hollywood kowtowing and Apple kowtowing to China, removing the Taiwanese flag, and they're trying to take over Hong Kong. And, I think it's a pretty open question, or it's at least plausible, that the coronavirus was deliberately unleashed on the world to hurt America, and specifically Donald Trump's re-election charges. Like, you see, there's a report out recently saying that Russia and China and Iran were trying to meddle in the US elections. Of the three, I would be most worried about China and least worried about Russia, honestly. So that's what I'm seeing. And for me, that is the big geopolitical battle that happens, regardless of what you think about, like, domestic politics in the US. All of that stuff pales in comparison to the battle between the US and China. And right now, the way I see it, Trump is pretty much the only one that's standing up to China. Biden sure as shit isn't, right? His son Hunter is in the pocket of China. Biden himself is pretty much in the pocket of China. If Biden wins, that's 4 years, another 4 years where China can just, like, put its tentacles everywhere in American life, and we're back to China being the ascendant power and Russia and America being declining. And here's the thing about China. I have no problem with the Chinese. Chinese people are phenomenal, but China is being run by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, which is a deeply corrupt, deeply terrible, totalitarian, authoritarian mafia regime. It's horrible. It's absolutely terrible. And they're the ones that are in charge, right? They're holding their own citizens as slaves, and they want to control America and the Western world as much as they possibly can. And if they're the only ones that make all the computers and high-tech equipment, and they're the only ones that make all the medical medicines and all that stuff, it's kind of a problem. It's a little bit of a problem for me. By the way, I forgot one thing, which is the making payoff to porn stars. You forget also Biden is pretty credibly accused of sexual assault with Tara Reid. Just want to throw that in there. It was on 60 Minutes Australia. For some reason, 60 Minutes America hasn't run it, but it was on 60 Minutes in Australia with Tara Reid. Is it true? Is it not? We don't know, but it seems fairly credible. And we know that he has this weird tendency to like sniff women, like even like very young girls. Like, what the fuck? Like, and you don't have a problem with that, presumably, right? So like, why would you not think that's a little weird or disgusting or both? All right, keep going here. Let's see here. All right, it's time to correct the big mistake. So here's what it comes down to. If you voted for Trump to support Trump last time, you made a big mistake. Okay? I don't think so. I think it was like, I regret that the media is so mean to Trump and his supporters that they have basically poisoned the country for everybody by just, like, they've gone after Trump with everything they could. Like, everything gets spun into hurting Trump. Project Veritas did does some really good sort of undercover kind of things where they expose people. They did one where there was one who worked for CNN and did some recordings of Wolf Blitzer and what's his face, the head of CNN. I forget his name right now. And they're just out to get Trump. That's their fucking agenda. And you have to just know that going in. So if you're watching CNN, that's the agenda. It's like make Trump look like an idiot and try to get him. Again, does he create plenty of fodder for it? Absolutely he does. I wish he would stop doing that, but he keeps giving them fodder. All right. Sorry, but it's true. No, it's not. The consequences of the 2016 election have been severe and enduring. The pandemic was always going to happen. I think so. This is interesting because this is where I'm on the opposite side, right? I think the pandemic happened because Trump. I think the Chinese let it out of the lab to get to Trump because they know they're the only ones that he's the only one that's going to stand up to them, right? So anything to hurt Trump's chances didn't work out quite that well. Well, maybe it did. We'll see, right? But it didn't have to be this bad. Conflict in society is inevitable, but we don't need to reach the point of complete collapse. I agree, and I blame the fucking media. I really do. Still, here we are. We all make mistakes. No one can change the outcome of the last election, but so much more is at stake the next 4 years. I agree with you on that. No matter what you thought about this president until now, there's still time, a very short amount of time to redeem yourself and walk away. I agree. I just think you should walk away in the other direction. Check out Brandon Straka, by the way. Walk away. #walk away. For my readers who are more progressive, it's important for you to show up too. Don't give in to the lie that this election doesn't matter, or that because Bernie Sanders or whoever you prefer didn't win the nomination is not worth it. You need to do your part. But I'm not writing this letter to you because you don't need my encouragement. Instead, I'm writing to anyone who's thinking of supporting the president's re-election. Whether you followed my work for a while, I have just stumbled upon this communication. Here's what I would say to you as strongly as I can. Please don't vote for Trump this time. You need to reconsider and change course while you still can. Chris, please don't vote for Biden. Please don't vote for someone who's going to sell out America to China and whoever else wants to line his pocket. Please don't sell out the country. Please reconsider voting for someone who has, who's just part of the swamp, man. Like, and I hate to use that term, but he's part of the political establishment. Like, what has he done for you over the past 47 years? He's been there for 47 years. What has he accomplished? Jack fucking shit. I don't know. I'm sure he's accomplished some things, but not a ton. If you've never voted for Democrat before, this is the time to jump ship. You have to go against the wishes of your family, so be it. Now is the time to be courageous. Okay. I'm not asking you to donate to Biden campaign or join a political party. What I'm saying is that his candidacy is the only path forward to prevent further breakdown of civil society. Okay. Who's responsible for breakdown of civil society here? Who's responsible? Like, who has broken down? Well, I mean, he's broken the norms for sure, right? Like, and he's definitely been a different type of candidate. Anyway, so let's keep going. One candidate in this election is a decent, competent person. Honestly, I don't think Biden is either decent or competent. I think Biden is highly incompetent and not decent at all. I think Trump is not decent. Competent is not probably the right word, but I think he's very effective at certain things. He's kind of a blunt instrument, and there's a few things that he does very, very well. And those things he does better than anyone. Like, who else could have negotiated the Abraham Accords? I think the China issue, putting that on the agenda, nobody else put that on the agenda. The whole idea that you can have a country without enforcing your borders and just like people can run over the border and then they kind of get to be here. That to me is, as a European, is absolutely fucking bonkers. I guarantee you we don't do that in Europe. And I think that's for the better. Well, then we have for with refugees lately kind of, and that has caused a lot of problems. So I wouldn't recommend that. His biggest weaknesses are that he seems a little out of touch and he talks too much. No. His biggest weaknesses are that he is in the pocket of the Chinese and he molests people, I guess, and lies, like outright lies, but he lies like not in a bullying way. He just lies like outright, and he says it like plain spokenly, but it's a complete fucking lie, right? One of the moments that really got to me, that's not Biden, but that's Kamala Harris. And let's be honest here, there's a great high likelihood that Kamala is going to be the president within 3 months or a year, or like very soon after Biden would become president. She attacked Biden during the debates, and she said, "I'm not saying you're a racist bot." And then she got after him for like racist stuff and as well as the sexual abuse stuff. And then on Colbert after, he asked her, he's like you were pretty harsh on Biden and now you're his VP candidate. Like what changed? And her answer is, it was a debate, right? So to me, that tells me that she has zero integrity, and she laughed about it. And she's like, yeah, it was a debate. So in a debate, I'll just say whatever the fuck to score a point. I think that's pretty disqualifying, honestly. You can say a lot about Trump, but he's consistent, right? Like when he says like Hillary should be in jail, he still says Hillary should be in jail like 4 years later, right? Like he doesn't flip-flop on it and like, oh, I just said that to win a debate. No, fuck, he fucking meant it, right? You can disagree with him, but he's at least honest about his opinions. The other candidate is a sexual predator. That would be Biden, right? Biden is a sexual predator. I would think it's pretty clear that Trump, I mean, he definitely has a checkered past, we agree. But, again, Clinton, sexual predator, right? Anyway, who's encouraged armed militias to support him if he doesn't win the election. That's funny, because that, I'm pretty sure, isn't that what Biden is kind of doing? Like BLM, Antifa, these people, all the riots, all that stuff. He hasn't really, he was kind of slow to come out against it. And hasn't quite sort of still very forcefully come out against it. What armed militias are we talking about that Trump has encouraged to support? I have not seen that. And I hang out on the right a lot. It's not a thing. Like if he loses fair and square, he loses fair and square. That's the game. That's how this works. I think everybody that I've seen completely agree with that. If there is a credible case that the election was stolen, then I think that's a different matter. And I think that goes on both sides, right? But I think the side that didn't accept the win the last time, like that didn't accept Trump last time, that was the other side. That was the Democrat side, right? They immediately started trying to sabotage him, and like they've basically not accepted it ever, right? Hillary didn't accept it. Hillary famously said that Biden shouldn't concede under any circumstances. I mean, that's kind of a statement. He's deployed the National Guard to tear gas peaceful citizens for the sake of a photo op. I had a friend who said the other day that he was a Trump supporter until that church incident. I have to look up on the details. So from what I've seen, these people were not peaceful at this time. Like, they were asked to leave, and then they started fighting back, and then they didn't, and then like shit went loose, right? But this is, I'm pretty sure that they were, like, there was a clear, like, they were asked to leave, they had to leave. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you have a permit to be here and now we changed our minds on it or anything like that. And I'd have to look into more of the details, but I think also calling it a photo op is a very down-putting way to say it, right? Maybe, like, as the commander-in-chief and as the president, to show that you're not cowering in your, like, I mean, the fact that the mayor of DC let things get so out of hand that they felt like they were under threat at the White House, that to me is a scandal. That's a fucking scandal. Like, that can't happen, right? We can't have a society where like, peacefully protesting, everybody agrees that that's totally okay, but we can't have a society where you let riots and looting and burning shit down get out of hand. That's just not acceptable. I don't care how angry you are, you protest peacefully, then you vote, then you get, oh shit, then you get a job working for the media or the institutions or whatever, and then you change shit through that's how it works. And we, like, just because you don't agree with whatever happens, you don't get to burn shit down. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. And so the fact that that's been getting out of hand in all of these different cities, including DC, getting close to the White House, I think that's outrageous. I think that's fucking crazy. And same thing as with, like, having, a country with a massive border with no really border protection. That's just completely bonkers to me. Anyway, So another way to look at this is, like, that the president wants to demonstrate that they can't, like, that he's despite what's going on there, that he's not afraid, that he's still in control. It's a way of signaling to the country strength, which is good for the country, for the economy, for the psychology of the country, right? But, like, poo-pooing it as for the sake of a photo op, that's just, it's a different spin on it. It's very, like, belittling of it, right? So I think there's multiple ways to look at that thing. All right. So for anyone who's ever thought America should be better than this, here's what you need to do. First, register to vote, request a mail-in ballot if you can, talk to your parents and grandparents who support Trump. If they're getting their news from Facebook, that's half the problem. Well, if you're getting your news from CNN or MSNBC, even worse, or, New York Times or Washington Post, then that's the problem, right? Seek out some of these or other sources. Ben Shapiro is great. Dave Rubin is great. Tom Sowell is great. Who else would I recommend? Just and read some books, and just, like, the National Pulse is fantastic. War Room Pandemic is great, and, like, try to get where they're coming from, right? What they're seeing that you're not seeing, that makes them talking this in the tenor and the voice that they're talking. Tell them what's really going on. I don't think you know what's really going on, Chris. I'm sorry to say. I don't claim that I know what's really going on, but I see very differently than you do. And a lot of these things are going on. What's kind of the bigger narrative? What's the more important? I don't know. And that's, so my whole game here is not like, haha, like left, right, like I'm right, you're wrong. That's not my game here. My game is just to say there's a different perspective here. And if reasonable people can disagree, like what is that underlying problem, right? What is that underlying problem that means that two smart people like you and myself can disagree about these things? Like what's wrong in a system that has you and I not even agree on what the fucking reality is, right? That's the thing that's broken. And so what we need is need to have more conversations like this. And I hope to make it a real conversation with you so that we can get to the bottom of all of this. And I can see the world through your eyes and you can see the world through my eyes. And together we become smarter and more enlightened. Show them the evidence from actual news sources. I would love to know what those quote unquote actual news sources that you're talking about are. Encourage them to change their minds. So I would take your own medicine. I would so take your own medicine here, right? International readers. I haven't forgotten about you. Most of you know that the whole world is watching the election. The outcome will affect your lives in many ways. Far-right governments are on the rise worldwide, and they gain strength when they see that a leader in the richest country in the world can get away with this. I think we're seeing the same, the populism, right? The leaders in Europe as well have basically been selling out the general population and, concentrating power in the EU further and further away from the general population, and it's not good. Another one that you should read, by the way, is Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He's written Anti-Fragile is fantastic. Skin in the Game is great. His books are phenomenal. Very good. So if you're not in the U.S., encourage your American friends to do the right thing. Tell them that you don't hate them if they voted differently or didn't vote at all before, but now it's the time for them to step up and make a change. Oh, I like what you say. You don't hate them if they voted differently before. You're kind of implying that maybe you hate them if they don't vote Biden this time. Last but not least, for anyone who says, Chris, I like your other work, but I don't like you being so political. The reality is that our lives are always political. I sort of agree. And also, I don't think we have to make everything about politics. I've been writing about things that matter since I started my blog in 2008. And if anything ever matter, this is it. I mean, this is the interesting thing, right? Everybody was like, oh shit, Trump's going to get elected and it's going to go to shit. Like, we're all still here. I mean, obviously shit's bad, but I think shit's bad because he is hitting the establishment where it hurts and fighting for the American people. That's my take. I don't care if you unsubscribe. I do care that you decide where you stand in this critical time in history. I appreciate you saying that because I have. Simply put, you need to choose a side. Please choose the right one this time. Yes, I believe I have done that. All right, Chris, I appreciate you putting this into writing. I appreciate you putting yourself out there. That is very courageous. Good stuff. I hope that this is helpful to some people. Again, I don't claim to have a monopoly on truth. What I enjoy is the dialogue and the, discovering truth together, but just, maintain an open mind and pliable and be able to see both sides, multiple sides, tons of sides, right? See multiple perspectives. And that way we can sort of collectively get closer to the truth. That's the game. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I love you, including you, Chris, from the bottom of my heart. I love this country so much. I'm so grateful every single day that you guys let me live here and live out my dream. And I am super excited and happy. We live in the most exciting, interesting times fucking ever. Most interesting times imaginable. And can't wait to see what happens over the next month. All right. Bye, guys. Have a good night. Go to notablenation.com. Do it now.